You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
You're listening to Straight to the Extra Point, your Niagara source for all news, draft coverage, free agency, weekly game analysis, game day betting picks, and fantasy football updates regarding the National Football League. Here's your hosts, Brandon Caputo and Miklos McMaster.
Welcome back, football fans, to another episode of Straight to the Extra Point, right here in the Armchair GM Sports Network, your April 24th, 2021 edition, your source for North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you right here in the beautiful Niagara region. You can find us on social media for updates, giveaways, and sponsorship promo codes by following the podcast on Twitter and liking us on Facebook and Instagram by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network, of course. And also, we are on many different platforms for you, including Spreaker.com, the free Spreaker app, as well as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Deezer. Wherever you're getting your podcasts at, we are there for you guys by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. And lastly, our beautiful, user-friendly website, armchairgmsports.com, for all things regarding the network, including articles, podcast episodes, sponsors, and contributors as well. We have a brand new mobile version of our website. Go and check that out as well. So wherever you're listening to us, you can like us, and please smash that subscribe button. It does help. And as always, I'm one of your hosts of the Straight to the Extra Point podcast. My name is Brandon Caputo. You can follow me on Twitter at Caputs13 with a Canadian Z. And I'm very pleased to be to welcome back to the network after a few-month hiatus to Straight to the Extra Point. He is Miklos McMaster. He is my co-host for all NFL news on the network. As you can see, I'm a little bit rusty. We haven't had an episode in a while, so you can follow him on Twitter at Miklos_McMaster. Miklos, welcome back to the network. And I know you're fired up more than anybody I know to talk about some NFL football as we turn to the 2021 calendar here.
Oh, Coach, it's been way too long. I mean, it happens every year, but the gap between the Super Bowl and the start of the new year always just seems to take forever.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, on today's show, we are basically going to just recap the NFL free agency. We know the draft's coming up next week, so stay tuned for our draft coverage before and after. But for today, for the first episode, we have to recap what's happened in NFL free agency. And again, still signings trickling in here, but for the most part, most of the big key name signings have happened. So with that said, let's open up, though, with the talk of what players moved via trade this offseason. And this first segment today is brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Center, helping job seekers find work with their free services and counseling professionals. 6100 Thurlstone Road, Niagara Falls, across from Campus Plaza. Call to book your appointment today to jumpstart your job search today. ehc.on.ca. Miklos, let's take a look at the trades, and we had a couple take place a lot take place in March for the most part, a couple in April that trickled in, but I just want to get your reactions to a couple of the big ones here. I'm just going to list them off and then get your reactions to them. So we had Bernandrick McKinney traded from the Texans to the Miami Dolphins. We had Malcolm Brown from the Saints to the Jaguars. Michael Brockers went from the Rams to the Lions. Rodney Hudson, as well as Trent Brown and Gabe Jackson, all traded away from the Raiders' offensive line. So I know you want to talk about that as well. The Eagles, obviously the big trade, Carson Wentz going from Philadelphia to Indianapolis, reuniting with Frank Reich, who was, I believe, his offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach in Philadelphia. I can't exactly remember what his title was, but Wentz had his most success when Frank Reich was in Philadelphia. Shaq Lawson went from the Dolphins to the Texans, kind of a salary dump trade there. And then also a couple other moves. The Lions also acquired Jared Goff in a salary dump, and including a boatload of draft picks from the L.A. Rams in the Matt Stafford trade. Other than that, a couple of minor signings or minor trades like Lee Smith going from the Buffalo Bills to the Atlanta Falcons, third-string tight end. So Miklos, first reactions on the trades that happened in March. A couple big ones there for the Raiders, getting rid of 3 offensive linemen there. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, I feel, and I don't know if you feel this way too, but the last couple of years, it really feels like GMs know that their jobs are a lot more on the line than they have been in the past, and so they're willing to make these huge moves early and often. I mean, the Carson Wentz trade, everyone kind of saw was coming, but there's been trades that everyone felt like was coming before in the past and haven't happened. And then the Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford trade to kick off the offseason. I mean, massive trade. We're like 3 picks and 2 major starting quarterbacks getting swapped there. I think that is so exciting and good for the NFL. And it's just good for fans. It's good content. But yeah, the Raiders picks, I think Trent Brown, I mean, he played like a grand total of like, probably an over-exaggeration, but like 4 games for us ever since we acquired him, and we made him the highest paid left tackle in the league. So I knew he was going to be moving this offseason any way possible. Interesting that he goes back to the Patriots. But yeah, we really didn't get what we expected out of him. And then Gabe Jackson, as I mentioned a lot on our podcast last year, the way the Raiders' offensive line was able to keep mixing and matching and still perform at an extremely high level. They brought in John Sampson from Clemson a couple of years ago, and he performed very well when he came in, and they had quite a few guys filling at the guard spot. And so Gabe Jackson, as much as I love him and he's really good, I kind of figured he might be a loss this offseason just because he costs a lot of money and clearly we can make it work without him. The move that really surprised me, especially considering, I mean, I guess 3rd round pick is good value, but Rodney Hudson leaving was really shocking for me. He's the best center in the NFL and has been for the last couple of years, and really is the anchor for the offensive line. I know we picked up Nick Martin from Houston, which is, you know, I'll consider it a downgrade, but he's still a highly talented center and a really good young center. But moving Rodney Hudson really surprised me because I felt like as long as you have a dynamite center, you can really fill in anyone on the offensive line, and that's kind of like your general of the O-line who can make everyone else work and everyone else tick. So I think that might be maybe a move that we regret this season.
And leave it to the Arizona Cardinals to jump in on that, the team that we have been loving the last probably over a year now as far as the moves that they have made up and down their organization. Just continue to make great moves via trade, via draft, via free agency. So the Arizona Cardinals and Steve Keim doing a great job acquiring great talent. So other than that, as far as other trades go, a couple of key defensive players moving, Miklos. Michael Brockers from the Rams to the Lions and Bernandrick McKinney from the Texans to the Dolphins there. What do you think about those moves?
Yeah, so I think Michael Brockers, it's I think an age thing. I mean, he has been very effective for the Rams for a very long time, but he is getting up there in age, and I think the Rams are just trying to get some kind of draft capital for their aging veterans as they've given up pretty much all their draft picks for the star players that they have on their team. They're really all in it now with Stafford and the moves that they've made to get Jalen Ramsey and the guys on their defense. So I know it's only a 7th round pick, but those filler guys that you pick later on can end up being key special teams players that helps you win a Super Bowl. So I think they're trying to free up some cap space and get some maybe added depth for their special teams. And then Bernardrick McKinney, I mean, I don't know what the Texans are doing, but I guess they're kind of on the fence of whether they just want to blow the whole team up or just keep trying to win because it's Deshaun Watson's status being still up in the air with everything that's going on with him is kind of like handicapping them. So I think getting rid of Bernardrick McKinney is probably a step back for their defense, but he was more of a traditional like run stuffer linebacker and not someone who really was the dynamic new era linebackers that we're seeing everywhere in the NFL. And I mean, they pick up Shaq Lawson, who he's been really disappointing since he came into the NFL. I mean, originally with the Bills. So I don't know. That's a very like meh lateral move. Both teams may benefit from these guys having a change of scenery, but who knows if it'll be a trade that really matters in the grand scheme of things.
And speaking of trades that will matter in the grand scheme of things, going over to April, only 2 trades in April, but man, are they significant. First, we had we were all wondering what the New York Jets were going to do. Were they going to keep Sam Darnold and maybe, decide to trade down and get a lot more assets, because we know the Jets need everything under the sun, to quote one of your great messages from podcast past about the New York Jets and their need for everything within their organization. Now with Robert Saleh as their head coach, they look like they're going to be turning a new leaf here, and it looks like they're going to be going in a different direction. And only 3 years after drafting Sam Darnold, or I think 3 or 4 years after drafting Sam Darnold 3rd overall, they are moving on from him. They traded him to the Carolina Panthers for a couple of mid-round draft picks, including a second-round pick. They didn't get a first for Sam Darnold, but what do you think of the return for the Jets, getting a couple of picks there for a guy that they're obviously going to be moving on from and most likely going to be going after the BYU quarterback Zach Wilson at 2nd overall? And also from the Carolina Panthers side of things, as Teddy Bridgewater, you don't really know what his injury status looks like, and with his injury history. So how do you think that trade worked out for both those clubs?
Honestly, I think it's a win-win. I do think that Matt Rule is not high on Teddy Bridgewater in Carolina. It certainly seems that way, that he's not super high on him. So bringing in Sam Darnold, I think Sam Darnold really got the short end of the stick in New York. He had coaching changes. He had no help, just a disaster situation to be put in as a young quarterback. And hopefully it didn't cause any permanent damage for his sake, because I do think he's a young, talented guy, and hopefully the change of scenery can help him bounce back. Matt Rule seems like an unbelievable coach with the job that he's doing there in Carolina, so maybe he can revive Sam Darnold's career and turn things around in Carolina. And then the Jets, honestly, all things considered, I think this is a pretty solid haul for Sam Darnold. People were saying you should be getting a first-round pick, but given how his career has gone and how bad the Jets have been overall as an organization, I think getting 3 picks, even though it's a 2nd, 4th, and 6th, is great return. And I really hope that Robert Saleh and the rest of the Jets organization can turn things around, because as we've seen with the Browns, it's so much fun to hate on these bad teams, but at the end of the day, it's bad for the league to have teams just perpetually being bad. It's good to have competition and parity, and if the Jets can turn things around and become the new Cinderella darling team of the NFL, I think that'll be great for the league as a whole. As we've seen with the Browns resurging, it's made the AFC North so exciting to have all these good playoff contending teams, and it's just good for the NFL.
Yep, and I'll be interested to see what the Jets do with that extra 2nd-round pick. I think that'll be very interesting. They have a lot of options. They could trade up, they could trade down, get more assets, maybe. But if nothing else, Sam Darnold gets out of New York, and I think that was a change of scenery that needed to happen for both sides, even though I agree with you 100% that I think Sam Darnold wasn't given any opportunities to succeed in New York during his time there. But hopefully brighter things are on the horizon for him in Carolina, and for the New York Jets, hopefully with their new quarterback. Looks like going to be Zach Wilson 2nd overall, but we'll get into more of that next week. But with that, we also, perfect timing for the show, we had a huge trade yesterday from 2 contenders, and I know you have a strong opinion on this, Miklos. The Kansas City Chiefs getting star offensive tackle Orlando Brown from the Baltimore Ravens, as well as a 2nd-round pick in 2021 and a 6th-round pick in 2022. The Baltimore Ravens received the Kansas City Chiefs' 1st-round pick this year in this upcoming draft next week. They also receive a 3rd and 4th-round pick in this year's draft and a 5th-round pick in 2022. So again, the biggest need for the Kansas City Chiefs was offensive line. We don't need Patrick Mahomes running around the field like he did in the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay. He probably ran for about 500 yards in that game, just scrambling around. And we knew that they needed to upgrade their offensive line. They let go of Eric Fisher, their former 1st overall pick, at left tackle, so they definitely needed some help there. But you kind of think that the Ravens maybe didn't get as quite a good return as they should, coming from the fact that they're giving Orlando Brown to most arguably their biggest competition in the AFC.
Yeah, it's a combination of things with this trade. First of all, I know Orlando Brown he demanded a trade. He wanted out of Baltimore, which puts you in a tough situation because he's a franchise level tackle and a young one. You still have him on his rookie contract. You never want to give a guy like that up. So that's the first thing. So second thing, yes, they got 4 picks for him, but really they swapped us, like they sent their second round pick away. So that's probably equivalent to their third and fourth. And then they get a 6th next year, or they sent a 6th from next year for a 5th next year. And then they get the first round pick from the Chiefs, but the first round pick's the 31st pick, which is, our 30th pick, which in my opinion is basically a second round pick. You're never going to find a guy of Orlando Brown's caliber unless it's the deepest offensive tackle class out there at 30. So I don't think they really got the return that they should have for Orlando Brown, but that's kind of expected because, everyone knows that they need to trade him. But to send him to the Chiefs, and I know I'm going to come off biased because I'm a Raiders fan and so don't want the Chiefs to be making any good moves, but even from the Ravens standpoint, you're trying to win a Super Bowl here, and everybody knows the road to the Super Bowl now goes through Kansas City. And what you're doing, sending your young franchise tackle to your biggest competitor in your own conference, it just boggles my mind. I don't know how they didn't they might as well have sent him to Pittsburgh. I don't know why they didn't send him to any team in the NFC. You can't tell me there's a team in the NFC that didn't have a similar offer for Orlando Brown. Everybody wants a tackle like that. So that was just very surprising for me. And I mean, good for the Kansas City Chiefs. As we said, Patrick Mahomes is running around like a madman in the Super Bowl, and it's a sad day that Fisher is gone because I loved watching him be a turnstile over there in Kansas City, and those days are long gone, I guess. But hopefully my Raiders can figure out a way to deal with this new offensive line on the Super Bowl runner-ups.
Yeah, biggest need for Kansas City, and they look like they have filled it at this point. Also, it's interesting for me, Miklos, and we can do this in the draft stuff, but again, Baltimore has now the 27th pick and the 31st pick, so there's options for them maybe to possibly move up in the draft if there's a guy that they really like, maybe in the 10 to 15 range. Maybe they could package up those 2 late firsts and move up. So, I mean, maybe there's a guy that the Ravens are looking at and they know that they can't get him, but acquiring that extra first-round pick might be the ammunition they need to get up there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that to me has to be what they're thinking at this point, because I can't see them getting replacement value by drafting. I can't see them drafting a comparable guy that low in the draft.
Yep, for sure. So that's basically it for the trades that happened this offseason. So a lot of interesting movement there, but a lot of big signings to talk about today, and that is the purpose of today's show with the thumbnail, the free agency recap and discussion. So stay right here. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break on Straight to the Extra Point and right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, serving traditional-style Italian pizzas made with the freshest, top-quality ingredients. Loaded subs and their famous chicken wings. Winners of the Reader's Choice Diamond Award, 4 years running from Niagara this week for Best Pizza and Wings in Niagara Falls. Home of the best tray and wing combo in town for the price and quality. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., located on the corner of Drummond Road and Dunn Street. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery at 905-374-4400. Make sure to like them on Facebook and view their website for their menu at carmine'spizzeria.ca. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano. Way too good. As we all adjust to this new world that we're living in today, masks are now mandatory, and Niagara's own Custom PPE is Canada's leading face mask provider. Visit them online at customppe.ca and choose between several mask options with different colors and sizes. Add your organization, company, or team logo so you make your face masks unique. Available to purchase online 24/7 at customppe.ca and shipped within 1 week. They have the best prices and quickest turnaround in Canada, and no order is too big or too small. Also offering custom floor stickers as well as face and counter shields for your business or workplace. Visit customppe.ca and use the code ARMCHAIR at checkout for 20% off your custom or blank face mask today. Custom PPE, Canada's leading face mask provider.
Attention job seekers, if you are currently looking for work in the Niagara region, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls, directly across from the Camisos Plaza. Their free services include resume and cover letter writing, community resource and referral information, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, second career information and registration assistance, and all their services are currently provided by appointment only. So give them a call at 905-358-0021 or visit their website at ehc.on.ca, the Niagara Employment Help Center. This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
War chant can only mean one thing. We're back, fired up to talk about some football and to talk about NFL free agency recap. And this segment today is brought to you by Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, home of the best pizza and wing combos in Niagara Falls, Ontario. Voted from Niagara this week, 4 years running. Available for call-in, pickup, or delivery. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, way too good. So, Miklos, let's get into the free agency stuff here. And, wow, a lot of big contracts handed out this year. We were wondering what it was going to be in a year coming, well, still in a pandemic, but kind of coming out of the pandemic year last season. And there were still a lot of big contracts that were handed out. I'm just going to go over a couple of the quick, the biggest ones to start here, and then we can kind of get into other stuff and your kind of takeaways from it. But Trent Williams gets the biggest deal as far as dollars go. He gets a 6-year deal worth $138 million to remain in San Francisco. So a big re-sign there for the 49ers and their hopes to get back to the playoffs this year. Bud Dupree gets a massive contract from the Tennessee Titans, 5 years, $82.5 million from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Tennessee Titans. So another big one there. They lost Jadeveon Clowney, who went on to the Cleveland Browns, so they replaced him with Bud Dupree. Joe Thuney goes from New England to Kansas City. The guard, $80 million for a 5-year contract for him. Huge signing here. Kenny Gallaudet leaving Detroit and going to the New York Football Giants, 4 years, $72 million. For one of the top 10 wide receivers, I think, in the NFL, on a very bad team in Detroit over the years. And then lastly, to round out the top 5 as far as dollars go, Shaq Barrett remains with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 4 years, $68 million, so trying to keep that Super Bowl winning defense intact. Miklos, just your initial reactions to those top 5 signings as far as dollar amounts go this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the thing in free agency, right? Where is the value worth it for the player? And, I mean, we always see these massive contracts being thrown around, but as longtime fans of the NFL will know that those dollar amounts don't mean anything. It's really about the guaranteed money. But I think a lot of those were deserving. I mean, Joe Thuney is a rock-solid offensive lineman for the Patriots, and as we mentioned, Kansas City, O-line was a massive need for them. So, I mean, even if some people feel like they may be overpaid, you got to get talented O-linemen like that when they're available. Kenny Gallaudet, I actually had as one of my top signings from this free agency for the Giants. I think the Giants they finally decided, hey, we're all in on Danny Dimes, and we need to get him some help. And what better way to do it than Kenny Gallaudet, who's really been a bona fide number 1 wide receiver out there in Detroit. As you mentioned, an absolutely terrible team, and they've just been a mess over there. But he's been one bright spot for the Detroit Lions. And now he gets to go to New York, the Big Apple, and we'll see how him and Danny Dimes can get it done.
Mm-hmm. One of my takeaways, Miklos, from free agency is, I guess the New England Patriots are tired of that 1 year of losing that they had over there in New England. I mean, again, they spent more money on day 1 of free agency than they have spent in the last 10 years of free agency, of first day free agencies combined. So I guess Bill Belichick doesn't want to be waiting around here for a full blown on New England Patriots rebuild. I think he's getting up there now, and I don't think he'd be staying around if the Patriots are going to be doing that. So 1 year off, I guess, for the Patriots is what they're trying to do here, and I guess they want to just try to recreate Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski combo there in New England that was so successful by bringing in two big end tight ends. I mean, you bring in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith from the Chargers and the Tennessee Titans, respectively. Miklos, just for me, like, what do the New England Patriots think of this? And I mean, Cam Newton, they re-signed him as well to start at quarterback. Do we really believe that Cam Newton's going to be the starter this year? And do you think that those two moves would help him in that regard, getting two tight ends and, trying to split out into two tight end sets most of the time here?
You know what? I definitely think Cam is going to be the starter. I mean, this is Bill Belichick we're talking about, so there's no guarantees there. If it's a different quarterback starting out the season, I wouldn't surprise me, but it does feel like he is going to be the starter this year. And I think really what this free agency is saying is Bill Belichick kind of saying, hey, Cam, we didn't give you the help you needed. Now there's going to be no excuse. They're bringing in having good tight ends make it so easy on a quarterback. They're the closest to the quarterback. It's shorter throws, and we've seen Bill Belichick do tons of stuff with his tight ends. And they bring in a lot of other help too. I mean, they brought in Nelson Aguilar, and I mean, Kendrick Bourne is not a big name, but I mean, we've seen the Patriots do lots of stuff with guys that we've never heard of before. So they add another weapon and wide receiver there, bring in Kyle Van Noy back into the fold, and I think Matthew Judon, a huge signing from Baltimore to the already really, really talented Patriots defense. So I think lots of big moves, and yeah, as you said, I think Bill Belichick did not like how last year went, and bringing in a lot of talent to kind of change the narrative there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Matthew Judon is a big add for the New England Patriots. And again, they had a couple of guys opt out last year because of the COVID situation, so they're getting a couple of key guys back on defense as well. So I expect the Patriots to be a lot better than we saw last year, and they still didn't even have the worst year that we probably had expected them to have with the lack of talent on their team. And just goes to show, I mean, they're willing to spend $25 million on an average salary on two tight ends, so they're for real, and it looks like the Patriots finally decided to spend some money, and obviously Joe Thuney from leaving from the New England Patriots to the Kansas City Chiefs was a big loss for them, but again, it's the New England Patriots are loading up again, and unfortunately, it looks like we'll see the Patriots back contending for a playoff spot after a 1-year absence, if we can even call it that. So, Miklos, other than the Patriots, what's one of your biggest takeaways from free agency?
I think, and this is considering one of my top teams who performed in free agency, even though they didn't make any so-called flashy signings, the fact that Tampa Bay re-signed everybody is just ridiculous, and it just goes to show you how the NFL is changing in people wanting to play on a championship team and willing to take pay cuts for it, because it's unbelievable to see a team that won the Super Bowl with the amount of high-profile players they have, and almost every single one of them re-signed to the team, which is just, one, shows you the power of Tom Brady, and two, just terrifying for the rest of the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can go over it real quick. Shaq Barrett, Ryan Suckup, Ndamukong Suh, Rob Gronkowski. Shout out to my boy Raheem Nunez-Roches, one of the top best names in the NFL. Just going to say that. Other than that, Leonard Fournette re-signs there, Ross Cockrell. And again, they get a bunch of guys that they're re-signed that are, backups and lower-end players. But like you mentioned, you need depth at every position. So when you re-sign those second and third string guys to cheap dollars, and obviously they wanted to be back on a team that's looking to go back-to-back here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it's incredible there that they were able to re-sign most of those guys. Antonio Brown's still a free agent. We don't know if he's coming back to Tampa Bay or not. But like you mentioned, yeah, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers being able to retain most of their Super Bowl winning team is incredible, because we see in the NFL every team is different from year to year, especially a team that just wins a Super Bowl. Those guys on that team, usually get paid a lot of money by other teams to come over and bring that experience and that championship pedigree. So great job by the front office there with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Jason Light as well. So with that said, Miklos, what's your next takeaway from free agency?
Yeah, so I think two signings that, along with the Kenny Gallaudet signing, that were one very big and another just, I think, very fun. I think Fitzpatrick to the Washington football team is just so fun. And we've seen the things that Fitzmagic can do. And I think him stepping in there with Riverboat Ron Rivera is going to be a recipe for some really fun football coming out of Washington, which is something that's just weird coming out of my mouth, as it's been so bad over there all these years. But given the way that defense is looking, having Ryan Fitzpatrick out there slinging the ball around to Terry McLaurin and everyone else, I think is going to be really good for Washington. And then the second one, Clowney to the Browns. I think was an incredible signing, along with a bunch of other signings that the Browns did, which I guess I'll just go into now, as I had them as my one of my other top three teams, along with the Buccaneers, for signings and free agency, because they also added John Johnson, who's dynamite, I think, very underrated safety from the Rams, who's so talented. They bring him, add him to their secondary. They add Clowney to their already dominant defensive line. They bring in Troy Hill, also from the Rams, who is, I think, another underrated corner. And then I know you have your own feelings about Takaris McKinley, but having him in there as depth in the D-line, it's always good to have more pass rushers. And then even adding Anthony Walker Jr., linebacker from the Colts, I think was another pretty solid signing. He's a young, talented guy adding depth to their already talented defense. And it really looks like the Browns are going to be looking good again this year.
Yeah, I mean, the Browns have had a couple of good off seasons here in a row here, and again, it just, for me, Jadeveon Clowney, I don't know if he's still living off of that one play that he had in college that made him the first overall pick. I don't know. He didn't have that big of an impact with the Tennessee Titans last year, and I'm just questioning whether he's as great as, you know, people around the league and us as fans kind of put him on that level at. So I'm just not sure what kind of expectations we can have from Jadeveon Clowney going into Cleveland. Maybe, you know, with a being around a bunch of other great defensive linemen as well will be good for him, maybe to take a little bit of the pressure off. But I don't know. To me, the jury's still out on Jadeveon Clowney being a game-changing defensive lineman, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can see that. He is maybe not lived up. I mean, it's hard to live up to the amount of hype that he got coming out of college, because the hype that he got, even before it was his draft year, was just unbelievable. But I think that being with the Browns is going to be really good for him, because Myles Garrett is the guy there. You know, everyone knows that he is the main dog. And I think it's going to be good for Jadeveon Clowney to be kind of the complement, the secondary piece, where he maybe won't get as many double teams as he had maybe in previous season. And just the talent all around the Browns defense is just so good that it'll be good for him to just be one of the complementary guys perhaps this year, as opposed to previous years in the defense for him. So I think it's a win-win for both the Browns and for Jadeveon Clowney.
If he's the complementary piece, then I'm all for it, exactly like you just put it there. But we all can agree, and I know you'll agree, Khalil Mack is the best player from that draft, bar none. But that's a discussion for another day. My takeaway is one of my favorite players to watch over his fantastic career on and off the field, J.J. Watt leaving the Houston Texans. I know it was a sad day for Texans Nation, and again, they're just going in a different direction. That team looks like it's about to be blown up, depending on the Deshaun Watson situation. But J.J. Watt, he's 32 years old now, again, former league MVP, multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year, just an unbelievable career. He's going from the Houston Texans to the Arizona Cardinals, and for me, they're one of my top three teams. Again, just like last year, Steve Keim's just doing an unbelievable job down there in Arizona. For me, getting J.J. Watt on a 2-year, $28 million deal. Again, you're not getting the J.J. Watt of maybe 2015 or one of his MVP-like years, but again, he's still a valuable guy on and off the field, and what he's going to bring to that team, I think, is going to be invaluable as far as anything that he does in the leadership side of things. I think he's just one of those guys that when he speaks, you listen and you respect him as a person and as one of the best defensive linemen to ever do it. So for me, J.J. Watt leaving from the Houston Texans to Arizona has got to be one of the biggest stories, in my opinion, of this offseason, Miklos.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had them. They're along with the Browns and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I had the Cardinals as my third and final top 3 team for the offseason, because it's just it's incredible what Steve Keim's been doing over there. In addition to J.J. Watt, which is a huge move, very classy move by the Texans to let him go and make his decision to go to the Cardinals. But they also in free agency add Malcolm Butler and James Conner, and even AJ Green, I think, was a really solid signing for them. All of these moves, JJ Watt and AJ Green are both definitely past their prime in terms of playing ability, but they are added to a team where they're not going to be expected to be the main guy. I mean, Chandler Jones is definitely the guy in terms of pass rushing for the Cardinals, and just having J.J. Watt over there, it gives him an opportunity to maybe take some breaks. They can manage his snaps so that they can get the best of what he has left, and then A.J. Green gets to roll into a team that has DeAndre Hopkins as far and away the number one. And I know he hasn't been re-signed yet because they're probably just waiting to see what he's going to do. But if Larry Fitzgerald comes back, then you have him added in there too. I mean, it's just disgusting, the team that they're building over there in Arizona.
Mm-hmm. They did have a couple of key losses there, though, Miklos. They lost Kenyon Drake, who went over to your Las Vegas Raiders, and as well Patrick Peterson, the longtime cornerback for them, goes to the Minnesota Vikings. So a couple of interesting losses there, but I don't think it's going to be able to look over what they've done over the last year and a half as far as bringing in top-end talent. And again, on the other side of it, they brought in a couple other names as well. James Conner, like you mentioned, from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, he's kind of been one of those inconsistent guys. He was projected to be like the next main guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and injuries have kind of derailed that for him. So he's going to Arizona to be kind of one of those utility backs for the Arizona Cardinals. I think that's a nice move as well. Matt Prater, the longtime kicker for the Detroit Lions, is going to Arizona as well, so they get a very solid kicker in that regard as well. So a lot of key signings, and like you mentioned, the A.J. Green stuff and bringing him in, Malcolm Butler as well. Again, these guys they're not being asked to be the number ones on their teams anymore. They're being asked to be complementary pieces, and as veteran guys and guys who have had great success in the league or who have won either championships or individual awards. I think that's never a bad thing to bring those types of guys into your organization, and to me, they brought in about 4 or 5 of those guys this offseason.
Yeah, I think both Kenyon Drake and Patrick Peterson leaving kind of surprised me. I know Patrick Peterson's getting older, but he's still very much the number one corner. Well, was the number one corner in Arizona, and then him leaving is definitely as weird as seeing J.J. Watt leave the Texans. And then Kenyon Drake, I was surprised that, one, the Raiders signed him, given the fact that we have a bona fide bell cow running back in Josh Jacobs. But never hurts to have more talented guys. But I do think it's a step down for Arizona to get James Conner. No offense to James Conner, but as you mentioned, his injury history. And Kenyon Drake really had a kind of a rebirth to his career in Arizona. He was doing incredibly well there, so that was kind of surprising. And I do think, even though he hasn't been what people have been expecting, Hassan Reddick leaving, I think, is also going to affect the Cardinals more than we think. I mean, he took longer to develop, but he was coming into his own last year. So I think that's another piece that you understand it, but you don't like losing a guy like that who you know what you have in him, and he's starting to come on. So I think that's another loss that may hurt more than they think.
Yeah, a 1-year deal to the Carolina Panthers for $8 million for Hassan Reddick. So other than that, again, J.J. Watt's jersey will be retired in Houston one day when he's done playing. But other than that, Miklos, what's your we'll get one more takeaway in here each.
Yeah, so I think some solid moves by the 49ers that I liked. Bringing in Wayne Gallman, I liked that move. I think Wayne Gallman's a solid running back and just really has took advantage of his opportunities when he had a chance with the Giants. So obviously with Saquon Barkley there, it's kind of tough to make the most of your opportunities. But I think he's going to get used a lot and well with the 49ers, and them bringing in Alex Mack as well from your Atlanta Falcons, who is a solid offensive lineman. And then also, as weird as it sounds, I think underrated linebacker from the Rams, Samson Ebukam, is going to be as a good ad, as well as even Mohamed Sanu, because we've seen San Francisco has become kind of like the Patriots of the NFC, where they just have these guys that you don't really think are going to be successful, but they somehow turn them into very successful players in their offense and schemes. So I do think those were some intriguing moves by San Francisco as they hope to bounce back this year and hopefully not suffer the catastrophic injury losses that they had last season.
Yeah, after making it to the Super Bowl the year prior. So for their sake, I hope they don't have that problem again. But for me, my last takeaway is kind of quarterback carousel related, and it's not really the starting quarterbacks I'm going to be talking about here. It's going to be kind of the guys that I didn't expect to even have a shot at being a starting quarterback in the league again, and for some reason they are in contention, if not the projected as the starter for their teams. I mean, you have Andy Dalton going from originally Cincinnati, back up in Dallas last year, forced in with the Dak Prescott injury. Now he's in Chicago. Mitch Trubisky is now the backup in Buffalo for Josh Allen. So you have a competition, I guess you can call it a competition, between Andy Dalton and Nick Foles, who we projected they were going to be moving on from, or somebody to take his contract, which hasn't happened yet. But Andy Dalton's projected to be the starter in Chicago. For me, that's a disaster waiting to happen for Bears fans. Andy Dalton, being at his age, I just don't see that working out very well. And then, for me, with one of the most surprising teams in a bad way this offseason, the Philadelphia Eagles, you lose Carson Wentz. You have Jalen Hurts there projected to be the starter. You bring in Joe Flacco, who's 36 years old now, was on the New York Jets last year, formerly the Denver Broncos and Baltimore Ravens, yada, yada, yada. Like, what is going on here with the Philadelphia Eagles bringing in Joe Flacco? To me, I don't understand that move. Do they think that he's going to be a guy that's going to push Jalen Hurts to be the starter? I don't know. For me, a couple of those moves just didn't make sense to me, Miklos.
Yeah, I think from the Andy Dalton perspective, he had a good showing. He really showed well when he was asked to step in Dallas, and I think he is a solid quarterback. I don't think he's a superstar, but he's solid. And I think that's the best that the Bears could really get, given their lack of capital to trade for one of these solid quarterbacks and their positioning in the draft. They can't really move up and aren't going to get the guy that's going to turn their franchise around from a quarterback standpoint at the slot that they're sitting at. So I think that's a solid move for them, given what they were able to do, because Andy Dalton, if anything, is going to be far more consistent, even if you know what you're going to get out of him, than the guys that they had. So I think that's where the Bears are at. And then the Eagles, I don't know what they've been. After last year, like their whole last year was just such a mess. And I think really best case scenario, I think what you're hoping from Joe Flacco is that he's a mentor to Jalen Hurts and helps him develop and learn what it's like being a pro in the NFL and become more consistent and everything. I guess that's what they're hoping to get out of him, but I don't really know what's going on in Philadelphia.
Yeah, me neither, and we could talk about it for hours. But with that said, before we wrap up this segment, Miklos, give me, again, you kind of said it already during this segment, but top 3 teams from free agency this year.
Yeah, so my top 3 teams, in no particular order, just the top 3, I think, are Arizona, Cleveland, and Tampa Bay, just on based on the moves that Cleveland and Arizona both have continued to add talent while minimizing any loss of significant talent through free agency. And Tampa Bay, just in the fact that they didn't lose anybody, really, which is just beyond incredible for a Super Bowl winning team.
No, absolutely. I mean, I have Arizona as well on my list. Again, we can't talk about them enough about what they've done over the last year and a half, rebuilding that organization from literally the ground up from the time they got Kyler Murray as the first overall pick. So for me, Arizona's got to be on there. For me, New England's got to be number 2 because of the fact that Bill Belichick and the Patriots actually spent money, and they spent a lot of it on areas of need, to bringing in Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. That's a dynamic tight end duo there. So unfortunately, I have to give New England credit. They spent a lot of money, and I think it was a very smart move for them. And for me, I think third has to be the New York Football Giants, Miklos. I mean, you bring in Kenny Gallaudet, you bring in Adoree Jackson. I know he's kind of been disappointing for the Tennessee Titans as their cornerback over the last couple of years, but the Giants, this is kind of like their time now. Like, Daniel Jones is going in, and he's not a rookie anymore. They kind of need Saquon Barkley to come back and have a big year. You get that bona fide number one receiver that they lost when they traded Odell Beckham Jr. away. They have Kenny Gallaudet now over there, and to me, and they bring in Kyle Rudolph as well as a tight end to kind of, bring in there for some flexibility at the tight end spot. So for me, I think the New York Giants are a team that maybe we should be talking about a little more, especially in a division that was the worst in football last year and kind of seems wide open at this point. We know Washington has a great defensive line, and we know the Cowboys could have a great offense, but I think the Giants, with the moves that they've made and their guys taking that next step, a couple of these moves could be big for them, winning, having a chance to win the NFC East this year.
Harry's going to be happy to hear that.
Yeah, so there you go. I picked Arizona, New England, New York Giants, and Miklos picked Cleveland, Arizona, and Tampa Bay for his top 3 teams this free agency. But again, it's not one on free agency, but we can give teams credit for now before they step on the field. But with that said, speaking of guys that need to step on the field, we need to take a commercial break, and we're going to come back with a quick segment. I'm going to get Miklos' reactions on a couple of guys that are still available and a couple of the rumored spots that they're projected to go. So stay right here. We'll be right back on Straight to the Extra Point and right here in the Armchair GM Sports Network.
J&L Flooring is a Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. They take great pride in providing elite customer service and support. They are a specialty flooring and decor boutique shop with a beautiful showroom, great pricing, and a wide variety and truly unique selection of products. All their products are environmentally friendly and responsibly produced, so you can feel great about your flooring choices. Their goal as a local business is to build authentic relationships based on honesty and integrity that they foster with respect and authenticity, offering unique and wide range of quality products presented by a knowledgeable and patient team. They connect with their customers to simplify the process to make their life easier and to make their homes beautiful. Visit them at 4424 Montrose Road, Niagara Falls, or find out more at jnlflooring.com. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 5 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 905-358-3299 J&L Flooring. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill is located on the top of Clifton Hill and just a 5-minute walk from the majestic Niagara Falls. It is conveniently nestled in the heart of the tourist district. A family-owned and operated business, the Spicy Olive opened its doors in May of 2003 and has since been established as an authentic and unique Italian restaurant and bar. Its rustic ambiance and time-worn finishing provide a warm and inviting dining experience. Offering an array of delicious dishes, they specialize in authentic Italian cuisine, homemade sauces, fresh ingredients, and consistently providing a strong foundation on which they build their menu. As night falls, the Spicy Olive shifts to a lively lounge where drinks and live music come together to make a perfect evening. For more than 15 years, they have provided not only for their dedicated locals, but their customers from all over the world with authentic Italian food and great live entertainment. Open daily 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. for dinner and till 2 a.m. for drinks. Check out their new menu and book reservations on their website at Spicy Olive Bar and Grill, it's with an E at the end, .com, or call 905-371-2323 for reservations as well. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the final segment of our Straight to the Extra Point NFL Free Agency Recap Show. Brandon and Miklos back with you here to wrap up the show with a couple interesting notes here of guys that are still available. So, Miklos, let's kind of go over the top 10 list here according to NFLTradeRumors.com. According to their top list here, Antonio Brown is the number 1 free agent still available. You can have your opinions on that. Sheldon Richardson, number 2, the longtime New York Jet, now Cleveland, formerly Cleveland Brown. Steven Nelson, Casey Hayward, Brian Poole, Eric Fisher, Mitchell Schwartz, Alejandro Villanueva, Russell Okung, I know you've been a big fan of his over the years, and Melvin Ingram are apparently the top free agents left available. Most of them in their 30s. The only 2 guys under 30 in that list were Brian Poole and Steven Nelson. So going off the top 10 list here, Miklos, just how many of these guys do you expect to sign very soon? And are you kind of shocked that it's kind of taken this long for these guys, or is it kind of expected with the COVID year?
I think with teams seeing more and more talent in the draft, which I do think the draft has gotten consistently more talented in terms of players who are able to step onto the field day one and make a difference, has made teams more patient in free agency. I am surprised that Melvin Ingram is still a free agent, given the things that he has done for the Chargers in the past. And even Casey Hayward is kind of surprising for me, but I think corners and wide receivers are kind of based on the number that enter the draft every year and the number that turn out talented, kind of explains why people are maybe being patient with Casey Hayward to see what they get in the draft and then maybe sign him after. But Melvin Ingram, just based on what people need in edge rushers, I mean, edge rushers are always needed. That kind of surprises me that he hasn't been signed. And the fact that there's all these O-linemen, I think just goes to show you the quality of offensive line that you can get in the draft and the players you can get. So I think people are just being patient, especially given that these guys are in their 30s and a little bit older, maybe not stepping into a starting role. But I expect Villanueva for sure to be signed after the draft, maybe shortly after the draft. And even Mitchell Schwartz is really solid. Eric Fisher, I mean, people saw what he did in Kansas City, and it wasn't great. So I don't know if he's going to be looking to be scooped up real quickly. Maybe he ends up on a really team-friendly deal going back to Kansas City. And then Russell Okung, I mean, I don't know who's going to be so willing to pay this guy, but definitely in a backup role, I imagine. As for Antonio Brown, I mean, we know how talented Antonio Brown is, but if it's not the Bucs, I honestly don't think he gets re-signed. I don't see a team taking a waiver. I mean, it took Tom Brady, the greatest of all time, to vouch for him to end up on a team. And if it's not Tom Brady vouching for him to come back on the Bucs, I don't see any other team taking the risk to sign a guy with that much baggage and personality issues.
I don't see Big Ben, vouching for him anytime soon to make a return to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's interesting that Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, both free agents at this time. You keep going up and down the list. There's a lot of guys, former Pro Bowlers, and guys that you would never expect to still be available and not have a job at this point, this late into the offseason here in mid-April. But like you mentioned, the draft is kind of a lot of guys coming in more NFL ready than we had ever expected. So even guys in the mid-rounds are expected to come in and maybe even kind of battle for a starting position nowadays. So I think that says a lot about scouting and just the level of athlete that are coming into the NFL these days. They're as NFL ready as ever these days. So a lot of guys still available. But I'm going to get your reactions to this report from BleacherReport.com from, I believe it was Gary Davenport. I'm going to go over just a couple of the kind of rumored moves that he has here, and you just kind of give me like a quick yes or no to you, if you think that these moves are going to happen or not. Again, these are kind of just they could happen, but they aren't set in stone. So at least as of now. So let's start off with Alejandro Villanueva to the Los Angeles Chargers. Miklos, are you yes or a no on that?
Honestly, I think yes. I think Villanueva, he is getting up there, but he's been a solid tackle, a mainstay for the Steelers for at least a decade, and protecting Big Ben's blind side. And I mean, they love what they're getting out of Justin Herbert there, so that makes sense to me.
Sheldon Richardson, defensive lineman to the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Sheldon Richardson, he was very talented for the Jets, but since then he's just been bouncing around from team to team. I mean, if the Packers want to take a low contract waiver on him to just add him to that defense, but I mean, we know the Packers are very hesitant about free agents in general, so I don't think so.
Edge rusher, longtime Kansas City Chief Justin Houston to the Indianapolis Colts, going back there for another season.
Yeah, I think that depends on the draft. If the Colts if they go in a different direction than edge rusher, then I think he'll probably go back there in a friendly option for them. So I could definitely see that happening, but I really think it depends on what the Colts do in the draft.
Another former Pittsburgh Steeler cornerback, Steven Nelson, to the San Francisco 49ers, obviously losing Richard Sherman, it looks like, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Steven Nelson, he's still young. He's 28, and who doesn't like corner depth? I mean, I don't really know much about Steven Nelson to comment specifically on his play style or anything, but I think adding corner depth, if he's available, is always good. The Chiefs' secondary is pretty young for the most part, and it's always good to add a solid, proven NFL player whenever you can.
Yeah, he was actually didn't have a great campaign in 2020. Gave up 7 touchdowns at corner, so he'll be looking to bounce back from that. Casey Hayward, the cornerback from the formerly Los Angeles Chargers to the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I found this one very intriguing. Casey Hayward has been, I think, underrated because he plays for the Chargers, but has been extremely talented. It's interesting him going to the Seahawks because he doesn't really fit their scheme. He's just kind of a smaller guy and smaller coverage guy based on like the big corners that they typically like in Seattle, but he is very talented, and who knows, they might bring him in there to replace the departed Shaquille Griffin. So
yeah, that'd be interesting. Richard Sherman, obviously formerly of the San Francisco 49ers and longtime Seattle Seahawk, reportedly New York Jets. Now that's interesting, obviously, because of the Robert Saleh connection there, the former defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, now the New York Jets head coach.
Yeah, I think this really depends on Richard Sherman, whether he wants to go there to play with like, I know it's because of the Saleh connection and everything, but if you're Richard Sherman, you only have a couple of years left in the NFL, and I can't see him going to a former, potentially still dumpster fire Jets organization to spend the last couple of years of his career just getting the crap kicked out of him on a daily basis.
And the last couple here, interesting. Antonio Brown to the Baltimore Ravens. I know you mentioned that you don't see anybody else other than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or Tom Brady bringing Antonio Brown back into the fold. Baltimore, do you think Antonio Brown could work there, especially knowing that it's a run-heavy offense and it goes through Lamar Jackson mostly?
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, I can see like the storyline is spicy and everything, and he is hyper talented, and the Ravens do need wide receivers, but I can't see that move happening. I mean, I don't know why. Like, one, I can't see Antonio Brown wanting to play there given how run heavy the Ravens are, but two, I can't see any benefit to the Ravens to signing a guy like that.
Yeah, he would basically just be doing it to spite the Steelers, to play them twice a year, and we know that the tabloids would be with that. So, yeah, that move, yikes. I don't know about that. And best for last, Miklos, as much as you've loved him over the years, Russell Okung, and projected to one of your favorite teams, I use that term lightly, to the Kansas City Chiefs. I think in your regard, you kind of hope that this happens.
It would be nice if he went over there and started at left tackle. That would be great. But I think was this article written before the trade that just happened? Because I think that was written with the expectation that the Chiefs were so desperate for offensive linemen that they would take a waiver on Okung. But given the fact that they just added Orlando Brown, I don't think that's very likely.
Yeah, it was written actually a day before the trade, so unfortunately for Gary Davenport, that one didn't work out too well. But those are kind of some interesting, kind of rumored destinations for some of the remaining free agents. I think those were kind of interesting. But Miklos, is there anybody on this list that you saw that maybe you're looking at that would be a big ad for somebody kind of late into free agency here?
You're talking about the top 100 left? Yeah. I think given his injury history, it might be tough, but Malik Hooker is still very talented. I mean, he's only 25, and if he can stay healthy, he's a huge difference maker out there. So I think if someone's looking to add a difference maker on the in the secondary, that's a huge pickup. Also, Quan Alexander, surprisingly, still a free agent for anyone who needs linebacker help. I expect him to be re-signed shortly after the draft or around the draft. But those are two names for sure that jump out to me. And then Ryan Carrigan as well. That he's departed from the Washington football team. He has been so solid, one of the bright points of that team for the past decade. So, I mean, Arizona, if they're looking to add yet more edge rusher help, I imagine you can get him for pretty cheap at 33. That would be just a disgusting ad, in my opinion. But even anyone else who, like, I would love the Raiders to sign him for more edge help. But yeah, those are the three names just out of like the top 50 there that kind of jump out to me.
Yeah, a lot of big names available this offseason. There was a lot of big player movement from guys that have been mainstays on their organizations for their whole careers, now moving to new jerseys and new colors, and it'll be interesting. Kind of weird to see them next year in those different colors, because we're so used to guys in their jerseys and with those teams that they've been drafted by. So a lot of long timers moving this offseason. So it's very interesting. And again, that's going to wrap it up for our free agency recap show. But stay tuned. We got a lot of stuff coming up with the draft, the stuff before the draft, stuff after the draft. Miklos will most likely be back with us for the draft recap shows, which are always a big hit every year. Go over the NFC, go over the AFC in a couple of different episodes there. So always fired up to get that, and with the fan interaction as well. So with that said, guys, this has been Straight to the Extra Point on the Armchair GM Sports Network, by sports fans, for sports fans. We'll see you guys next week. Enjoy the NFL Draft.